Welcome to the Jamesburg Presbyterian Church. Today is Tuesday, September the 29th, 2020. So good to know that so many of you are already watching on live streaming, and I know that others will tune in later on. It's been a really interesting time doing a Bible study to mainly empty pews, but also knowing at the same time that there are people tuning in. Today we're doing the final chapter of the book of Ruth. There are 4 chapters in the book of Ruth, and we're focusing on that final chapter. Next week, we're going to begin a 5-week study of 5 fantastic parables. The first one will likely be the parable of the Good Samaritan. That's the one I want to start with. And then I'll tell you the other parables at the end of each lesson. I'll tell you the following parable. All right, so today we're again, I had said from the very beginning that Ruth is brilliantly written. The Hebrew reveals much more than the English translation, because sometimes in the English translation we try to avoid repetition, which is part of the genius of the Hebrew. So we'll use different words to translate the Hebrew words rather than the same words, or we'll use a word that seems to be more precise for the meaning of the sentence rather than the sense that the Hebrew word uses. So today we're dealing with contrasts again, and that is to redeem or to cover and recover and uncover. Last week you'll remember that Ruth goes to the threshing floor and she uncovers Boaz. This week we're going to be looking at a sense in which something is going to be recovered. So in the previous chapter, Boaz has made a promise to Ruth. Ruth has gone home and told Naomi. Naomi is kind of excited about the possibilities. While the promise is not explicit in regard to what Boaz is going to do, he does make it clear that he's going to do something. We find out from last week that there is a closer relative that has legal responsibilities and legal opportunities closer than Boaz does, that Boaz is actually second in line. So this story is going to be about how that all gets resolved. One of the things that this chapter also alludes to is the possibility of regional rules or understandings, regional customs, legal customs, because some of what is going to happen in this chapter is not in the Old Testament laws. So, and we're going to even be told that in one case something is a custom, as if the reader reading this does not know that. So it may be a custom that was very ancient and no longer in use at the time of the writing of this book. All right, so, and the other thing we need to also remember is that Ruth is a Moabite, and that and she is the foreigner. So what happens in this particular chapter? Boaz goes to the central gate of the city in Bethlehem. Those gates, according to archaeological digs, usually had a place for sitting, usually had a place for gathering. So what would happen is the municipal courts, with quotation marks all around it, would be held in that location. So if a person had a grievance, if a person wanted to make some sort of land transaction, if a person wanted to confront someone about anything, you would do it in this town gate, this town opening. Disputes were settled. Various kinds of business were conducted. You would expect to be, if you went there, you could expect to be called upon to be part of the jury who would hear the case, or at least the witness to some sort of business transaction. So Boaz has gone to that place in Bethlehem, and we are told that another man joins them. Now, the man is, interestingly enough, is not given a name. As a matter of fact, in the Hebrew, he's referred to as so-and-so. So-and-so is the man who is the closer relative to Naomi and therefore has had legal responsibility in regard to Naomi and her care, legal responsibility in regard to the land, and we may even gather that he has been using the land that was left behind by Elimelech. One of the other things that we need to know, too, is that if I owned a parcel of land and I needed some money and I sold that parcel of land to someone, they would have that parcel of land until the year of Jubilee. At that occasion, the year of Jubilee, the land reverts back to me. So land doesn't always get sold permanently. It doesn't transfer into someone else's possession permanently. There are ways in which it can, mostly through marriage, but here the case is so-and-so is going to be confronted. So Boaz invites so-and-so to sit down, and Boaz begins to tell him about the land. And he says that Naomi actually wants to sell the land. And he says, would you be interested in buying it? The reason I bring it to your attention is because you are the closer relative. You have first dibs, as it is, on that piece of property. And all the elders are sitting there. So-and-so sitting there. Boaz is sitting there. And so Boaz has confronted him, will you do the right thing? He's been using the land. Now the question is, will you buy the land? Will you actually give Naomi money for the land you have been using? The man, so-and-so, says, well, of course I'll buy it. No problem. So as the first 4 verses of chapter 4 conclude, we get the impression that so-and-so is finally going to do the right thing and buy the parcel of land from Naomi, and this will give Naomi money so that she can live her life. And it has been done in front of everyone. Now we get into verses 5 and 6. Oh, by the way, Boaz says, there is a little other matter that I need to bring up to you. On the day you buy the land from Naomi and from Ruth the Moabitess, you acquire the dead man's widow in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property. Now, the question here becomes, and it's absolutely not clear in the Hebrew, it's absolutely not clear in the English translation, which widow? Ruth is a widow, Naomi's a widow. And what the idea is that so-and-so will take on the widow as a wife. And with that wife will have a child, and that child will continue the family name in regard to the property. So, and here it's the practice of levirate marriage, and it's not altogether clear that this is required. This may be a local custom in Bethlehem at the time. It's not something that is in the Old Testament, that when you buy land you have to do a levirate marriage. So Boaz has made it sound like this is an obligation, this is a catch. You acquire a wife in the deal too, land and a wife. Not really sure which of the women is being alluded to. We might conclude that it would be Ruth because she's the younger of the two, but she's also not Jewish, and which is why previously I said she's the Moabitess. There is no legal obligation in regard to doing something for Ruth because she's a foreigner. So is Boaz suggesting that the marriage would be to Naomi, the older woman? And by leaving it vague, the so-and-so is able to jump to his own conclusions. And so-and-so says, whoa, time out. you didn't bring that up when we were talking about buying the land, and I'm not interested in taking on another wife. I'm not interested in doing this. I'm not interested in endangering my estate. You see, if so-and-so marries, let's say Naomi, and has a child with Naomi, that child now is able to inherit everything. Not just the land that this man plans to buy, but everything the man owns. And this man does not want to do that. Now, we're not told whether so-and-so is already married. We're not told if he has children. All we know for sure is that he sees the legal ramifications if he continues with this land transaction. So he says, no, I'm not interested. You redeem it. I cannot. So the ball comes back into Boaz's court. If Boaz wants the land, if Boaz wants the widow, which widow? But if Boaz wants the widow, then he is able to do it. This is an important thing because what needed to happen was the person who had the closest relationship to Naomi had to go on record publicly in front of everyone saying that he did not want this transaction. He did not want to buy the land, and in fact says to Boaz, you do it. So this is a legal thing. In verses 7 through 11, the man does again something that seems to be a local tradition. He takes off one of his sandals and hands it over to Boaz. Now, today, what we would do is at a closing of a land property, we would have people sitting in a law office with their lawyers signing papers and passing the papers back and forth so that all the parties could sign the papers. But here, the transaction is done by the handing over of a sandal, of a shoe. So-and-so hands over his sandal. Now, it's not just a verbal confirmation that he has made, but he has done that physical confirmation that he is not buying the land, that Boaz is free to buy it. The narrator says, in regard to the sandal, that this was the custom in former days, which indicates that the story may be being told to people who no longer have this custom in their lives, or it's a local custom and people are reading this in another place beside Bethlehem. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 7 through 10 says that a widow whose husband's brother refuses to perform the levirate duties has the right to pull the sandal off his foot and spit in his face in the presence of elders. Ruth chapter 4, verse 7 indicates that taking off a sandal in front of witnesses represents a legal transaction. Once the sandal is in Boaz's possession, he is now free to do with that property. He now has the rights to proceed with the property purchase. And the transaction, Boaz says to the people, today you are witnesses. I have not only acquired the property of Elimelech and the two sons, I have also acquired Ruth the Moabitess, Mahon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from the town records. Now, the word acquire can be translated in regard to property, or it can be translated as to buy or to purchase or to create or to make commitment to or to possess. So what Boaz is saying here is I am making a commitment to Ruth. That's the word I choose to translate that Hebrew word, quena. So Boaz has declared publicly in front of the elders what he plans to do here, and the elders say, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. In verses 11 through 12, they offer a threefold blessing. The first blessing concerns Boaz's bride, Ruth. The second concerns Boaz himself, and the third concerns his house. So the first one is, may you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. So house is clearly having to do with heritage, and they're blessing Boaz with the hope that he will truly be blessed in this relationship and in this business transaction. In the final verses 13 through 17, the women now are going to celebrate what has happened because a baby has been born, and the baby is named Obed. Naomi has the baby in her hands, and the women who greeted her in chapter 1, when she came back to Bethlehem, and they said to her, "Is this Naomi, the woman of joy?" And she says, "No, this is Mara, the woman of bitterness." And here they say to her, "You have been redeemed. You have gotten back your life. God will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. This baby will be her future. This baby will be her life." And if you have, and this is what is going to happen for her. The conception of a child is considered to be a gift from God, and we're told the Lord made Ruth conceive. And the women say to Naomi that this child Obed is her redeemer. As Naomi's son, Obed is the heir who will maintain the name of her dead son, and he will resume ownership of the property when he comes of age. So Obed is the future. Now, what we're told in the final verses of this chapter is that Obed is not just anybody. He's not a common person who dies off the pages of history. No, he actually becomes the father of Jesse, and Jesse becomes the father of David, King David of Israel. And from that lineage, we find Jesus of Nazareth being born from the lineage of David. So this child, Obed, is an important and significant person in regard to the future of Israel. And truly, Naomi becomes blessed because of Obed. Ruth's son is Naomi's redeemer, and by redeemer we mean there has been a reversal of fortune. This birth has absorbed Naomi's bitterness and has given her reason to believe that God has not abandoned her. This conception, this baby, this birth becomes Naomi's future. And we're also realized that Ruth, the Moabite woman, was more family to Naomi than this so-and-so character who was directly related, who had legal responsibilities. Ruth, the Moabitess, was more family and more loving. The foreigner was more loving and more caring than even her own relative living in Jerusalem, or living in Bethlehem, and a person who had responsibilities for Naomi when she returned. So the story concludes with our knowing that David is going to be king. Well, we don't know that on the basis of this story, but we know historically that David becomes king, and that the nation continued to look for a redeemer, and Obed is considered to be a redeemer, for a redeemer even until the time of the first century, and even until today. So next week, we'll pick up on the parable of the Good Samaritan. I'm looking forward to that. We'll be returning to the New Testament. The parable of the Good Samaritan is found in Luke's Gospel. So I'd invite you to look that up, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much for viewing today. It was great. It's great to know, always great to know, that so many of you are tuning in. I'm humbled by that fact, and I'm honored. Thank you. Bye.